The city didn't sing, it hissed. It groaned through rusted pipes, buzzed through flickering neon signs, coughed through old exhaust pipes of cars with more rust than paint. It murmured arguments through thin apartment walls and cried quietly beneath bridges no one dared to cross after dark. The only music in this part of Detroit came from sirens, shouting, and the rhythmic clatter of life trying not to fall apart. 12-year-old Malik James had lived in Building 6 of the Eden Heights housing complex his entire life. Eden Heights, as the old sign by the gate proclaimed with chipping paint and ironic pride, was anything but Eden. Every window was a cracked eye staring at the same story. Single mothers dragging themselves home after double shifts, kids playing barefoot on concrete, and the occasional police cruiser making slow, silent laps around the block. Malik was small for his age, slender, wiry, with quiet eyes that took in more than he ever said. His world was stitched together by small routines, helping Mama fold laundry before she went to work, feeding the stray cat that slept behind the stairs, timing how long the water took to get hot in the morning. Most days, it never did. And listening, always listening. His mother worked nights at the supermarket on 12th Street. By the time Malik got home from school, she was already gone, her uniform folded and hung with care over the chair, her scent lingering, faintly, vanilla lotion and tired dreams. Malik didn't complain. He never had. He understood things most kids didn't, that lights didn't stay on unless you paid the bill, that grown-ups cried sometimes when they thought no one was looking, that dreams, once broken, were rarely repaired. But he had a secret, a craving that made no sense in a world like his. Music. He didn't know why it pulled him in so fiercely. Maybe it was the way melodies wrapped themselves around the noise and made it feel bearable. Maybe it was because when notes were played just right, the world stopped sounding like it was falling apart. He had no instrument, no teacher, no formal knowledge, just a secondhand radio and a heart that seemed to recognize something unexplainable when he heard it. Most nights he would sit cross-legged on the floor, the radio held close to his chest, eyes closed, listening to the classical station if he could catch it through the static. It wasn't until a Thursday afternoon in late October that everything changed. He was walking home from school, cutting through the alley behind the old community center, when he saw it. A piano. An actual piano. There it stood, absurdly out of place, tilted awkwardly on its broken leg, half covered in a torn tarp and surrounded by piles of discarded furniture and soggy cardboard. The alley smelled like rot and old paint, and yet this thing, this forgotten instrument, shone in his eyes like treasure. He dropped his backpack, walked over slowly, almost reverently, and peeled back the tarp. It was dusty, weather-stained. The wood had deep scratches and one corner was splintered badly. The lid had fallen off completely, resting crookedly against the back wall of the alley. Its keys, those beautiful ivory and ebony teeth, were yellowed, some chipped, but they were all there. Malik glanced around. No one. Only the alley and the soft hush of wind pushing plastic bags across the pavement. He reached out and touched a key. It made a sound, not a pretty one, more like a wheeze, a croak, but it was a sound. He pressed another, then another. Some didn't work, some stuck, but a few still responded. He laughed, startled by the joy bubbling up in his chest. His fingers fumbled awkwardly, searching, testing, playing nonsense. And yet it was music, or something like it. He spent the next hour there, completely lost. The sun began to dip below the buildings, painting the alley in deep orange shadows. Malik didn't notice. Not until his stomach growled, reminding him of dinner, what little there was of it. That night, as he poked at a can of beans on the stove, he looked over at the empty corner of the apartment. It was barely big enough for their worn sofa and chipped table, But if he moved some things, maybe, just maybe. When his mom got home at 11:17 p.m., exhausted and rubbing her temples, Malik was waiting. "Mama," he said before she could even take off her shoes, "I need your help tomorrow, after school." She blinked. "With what, baby?" He hesitated. "Moving something. It's important." She studied him, then sighed. "Can it wait till Saturday?" "It might not be there by then," he said quickly. "Someone might take it." Now she really looked at him. "Take what?" "A piano." She raised her eyebrows. "A piano?" He nodded. "In Eden Heights?" He nodded again, more urgently. She laughed, not cruelly, but the kind of laugh people give when life has taught them to be skeptical of miracles. She tousled his hair. "You find a golden trumpet, too, while you're at it." He didn't laugh. He just said quietly, "Please, Mama, just come see." The next day, true to her word, she came. And she stopped laughing. They stood in the alley, side by side, staring at the sad, battered instrument. "Lord," she whispered, "it's real." "Told you." She looked at him, then back at the piano, then shook her head. "We ain't got room for that. It probably got rats in it." "No, it doesn't. I checked." "Where would we even put it?" "In the corner, by the window. I can move the shelf. I don't need the shelf." She chewed her lip, her arms folded. I could see her brain weighing things: money, space, practicality. But then she saw something else. The way Malik looked at it, like it was more than wood and keys and dust, like it mattered, really mattered. And in that moment, she said yes. They borrowed an old dolly cart from Mr. Ray, the janitor, and rolled the piano slowly through the complex. It groaned with every bump, each creak sounding like a protest. Neighbors poked their heads out of windows and doorways watching the strange parade. Some laughed, others shook their heads. But Malik didn't care. He was bringing music home. It took 3 hours. 3 long, sweaty, back-breaking hours to wrestle it into the apartment, make space, wipe it down as best they could. One leg was completely broken, so they propped it up with an old crate and a stack of textbooks from a giveaway bin. When it finally stood, lopsided, scratched, but proud, Malik stepped back and stared. His mother lit a candle on the windowsill. "Well, there it is," she said softly. Malik said nothing. He just sat down on the rickety stool they found beside it and placed his fingers on the keys. He didn't know how to play, but he would learn. Somehow he would learn. And in the silence that followed, he pressed down on a single note. It rang out, broken but clear. A beginning. Malik didn't tell anyone about the piano. Not his teachers, not his friends, though friends was perhaps too generous a word. He had classmates, sure, kids who knew his name, passed him basketballs, maybe nodded in the hallway. But none who really understood him, and none he trusted with something this sacred. Every day after school, he rushed home, past the corner store with the cracked window and the flickering open sign, past old Miss Trudy with her oxygen tank and the fat cat that never moved from her window. Up 4 flights of stairs, 2 steps at a time, through the door that stuck unless you kicked it near the hinge. Straight to the piano. It had become a ritual. Drop his bag, slide the crate stool into place, lift the keyboard cover carefully, reverently, lay his fingers down, and begin. Except he didn't really know what begin meant. He had no sheet music, no idea which key was which, what a scale looked like, or how chords worked. But he had ears, and he had time. He started small, 1 note at a time. He tested each key, cataloging their sounds in his mind. This one high and tinny, that one low and muffled. Some keys refused to cooperate at all, sticking or groaning or releasing an ugly metallic clang. But others sang. Worn voices, yes, but still voices. He made a game of it. He would try to play along with the songs on the radio. It was all trial and error, fumbling, repeating, rewinding, tapping, listening, adjusting. Sometimes he got frustrated. Sometimes he wanted to scream. But sometimes, just sometimes, a note would fall into place so perfectly it made his whole chest thrum. It was like unlocking a door to a room he hadn't known existed. And behind that door was something vast, beautiful, endless. His mother noticed the change in him. He smiled more, walked lighter, ate dinner with both hands instead of reading the back of a cereal box. She didn't ask too many questions. She'd learned not to interrupt things that gave her son light. But one night, while folding laundry on the couch, she said quietly, "You ever think about learning for real? I mean, with a teacher?" Malik looked up from the keys. "We can't afford a teacher." She didn't answer, just folded a pair of socks slowly. He watched her, then said, "It's okay. I don't need one. I'll figure it out." She nodded. "You always do." That night, while Malik slept, she went online at the library searching free piano lessons for Kids Detroit. Most of what she found cost money. Some of it a lot, some of it a little, but all of it more than they had. Still, she didn't give up. She printed out pages, made calls on her lunch break, wrote down names and addresses. One name came up again and again, Mr. Charles Thomas, a retired jazz pianist who volunteered part-time at the community center down the block. She circled his name twice. But Malik didn't wait for anyone. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rolled in the distance and rain traced lazy lines down the window pane, Malik discovered something. He'd been trying to recreate a song he heard on the radio the night before. Beethoven, he thought, though he hadn't caught the name. It had made his heart ache, the way the notes rose and fell like breathing. He wanted to touch that feeling again. So he tried. For an hour. 2. He stumbled, hit wrong keys, got stuck on one part over and over. Then, frustrated, he closed his eyes. And played. Not perfectly, not even correctly if judged by anyone who knew music. But it sounded right to him. Like rain on a roof. Like something old trying to be new. That was the day Malik began trusting his fingers more than his mind. He started playing by feel, by instinct, by memory of emotion. His music wasn't clean, it wasn't technical, but it was alive. And people noticed. The woman upstairs, Mrs. Harmon, who always complained about kids being too loud, left a note under their door one morning. "Whoever's playing the piano, don't stop. It makes my nights better." Another neighbor left a candy bar and a sticky note. "That jazz thing you played yesterday? Fire." Malik smiled when he read them, not because of praise, but because it meant someone was listening. He kept going. One day he was playing something soft, slow, something that reminded him of a photograph of his mother when she was young. Braids, big hoop earrings, smiling wide beside a record player. The melody felt like that photo looked. As he finished, a knock sounded at the door. He froze. Knocks weren't common here. Not friendly ones, anyway. He opened the door cautiously. An old man stood there, tall and thin, with skin the color of roasted coffee and a white beard that looked like a cloud had settled on his chin. He wore a battered fedora and a long coat 2 sizes too big. "You the boy been playing that piano?" Malik hesitated. "Yeah." The man smiled. "You got ears, son, and fingers, too. What you don't have is training, but I can help you with that, if you want it." Malik blinked. "You're who?" "Name's Charles. Charles Thomas. Folks call me Mr. T. I live over in Building 4. Heard you playing through my window. Been listening for weeks." Malik stepped aside without thinking. "You used to teach music?" "Used to be music," Mr. T chuckled, stepping inside. He took one look at the piano and whistled low. "Lord, she's a rough one." "She works," Malik said quickly. "She does, barely. But your fingers got fire. They just don't know where to go yet." Mr. Thomas sat beside him on the crate. "First lesson's free. Lesson 1, piano ain't about just fingers. It's about breath. You gotta let the music breathe." He placed Malik's hands on the keys, guided them gently. "Try this chord. Feel that tension? Now move here. Hear how it resolves?" Malik nodded, eyes wide. "Music is storytelling, with no words, just feeling." They played for an hour, then 2. Malik learned more in those minutes than in weeks of self-study. Not because Mr. Thomas barked rules, but because he showed how to listen. When the old man finally stood to go, he said, "I'm here most afternoons. Come find me when you're ready for more." Then he added, "But don't stop playing on your own. That sound in you, that's your soul talking. Don't let anyone silence it." The door clicked shut behind him. Malik sat for a long time, his fingers still resting on the keys, the room quiet except for the humming of the refrigerator. Then he smiled. He had found a teacher. But more than that, he had found a path. And for the first time in his life, Malik began to believe that maybe, just maybe, this broken place he called home could become something beautiful. One note at a time. The next afternoon, Malik stood outside Building 4 with his heart pounding like a drum. He had knocked 3 times already. Each time, he considered turning and leaving. What if Mr. Thomas had only meant that offer as a passing kindness? What if he wasn't home? Or worse, what if he'd changed his mind? Just as Malik raised his hand for a 4th try, the door creaked open. "Well, took you long enough," Mr. Thomas said, grinning. "I wasn't sure you meant it," Malik mumbled. "Son," the old man said, stepping aside, "a real musician never makes promises he don't intend to keep." Inside, the apartment was small but full of character. The walls were lined with faded posters of jazz legends, Coltrane, Ella, and Monk, and rows of dusty records. A bookshelf sagged under the weight of old music theory books, and the air smelled faintly of tobacco and lemon oil. In the center of it all stood a grand old upright piano, deep mahogany, its keys worn but intact, polished to a gentle shine. Malik stared. "She's called Lucille," Mr. Thomas said proudly. "Had her since 1971. Every song I've ever written started on her." He tapped the top affectionately. "Go ahead. Touch her. She don't bite." Malik approached slowly, almost reverentially. He ran his fingers along the cool surface, then let them hover over the keys. "She's in tune," Mr. Thomas said, more or less. "Now let's see what you got." Malik sat down and played the simple melody he'd been working on all week. 8 bars, his own invention, slow and uncertain. His fingers stumbled a little, but he kept going. When he finished, Mr. Thomas didn't say a word. He walked around, leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You got ears," he said finally. "You hear things most people don't." Malik's heart lifted. "But," Mr. Thomas added, "you ain't listening to your hands." Malik blinked. "I don't understand." "You play notes, that's good. But music ain't notes. It's movement. It's what happens between the notes." He pulled up a stool beside him. "Let me show you." Mr. Thomas placed his old hands on the piano. They were gnarled, spotted, the veins like tree roots under the skin. But when he played, they moved like water, fluid, effortless, each note blooming into the next like sunlight bleeding through clouds. He didn't play fast. He didn't need to. Each chord hung in the air like a truth that had waited years to be spoken. Malik was silent, eyes wide, barely breathing. When the final note faded, Mr. Thomas looked over. "Now you." Malik tried. He really did. He mimicked the chords, followed the pattern, but it came out stilted, clumsy. Mr. Thomas didn't scold him. He smiled. "Good," he said. "Now do it again. But this time, don't think about the notes. Think about breathing. Feel the silence before and after each sound. Let the music speak." Malik closed his eyes and played again. This time, something changed. It wasn't perfect, but it was closer. "You feel that?" Mr. Thomas asked. Malik nodded. "That's the beginning," the old man said. From that day on, Malik came to Building 4 every afternoon. Mr. Thomas didn't charge a cent. "Only payment I want is that you don't quit." And Malik didn't. He practiced until his fingers ached. He learned to read chords, to recognize intervals by ear. Mr. Thomas gave him old sheet music, taught him the blues scale, the circle of fifths, the names of the greats. Sometimes they didn't play at all. They just talked about music, about the old days, about how Miles Davis once walked off stage mid-performance because a man sneezed in the front row. Malik soaked it all in. At home, he brought everything he learned back to his battered alleyway piano. The sound was still rough, but now his hands moved with purpose. He began writing small pieces, little sketches of emotion, short stories in sound. His mother would sometimes pause at the doorway and listen, her eyes misty. "You're getting good," she said once. "I'm just learning," he replied. But inside he glowed. One evening, after a lesson, Mr. Thomas said, "You ever play for an audience?" Malik shook his head. "Well, you're going to." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded flyer. "Community Showcase, Saturday night, open to all talents." "I don't know," Malik started. Mr. Thomas raised an eyebrow. "You scared?" "No," Malik lied. "Well, good, 'cause fear's normal. Means it matters." Malik stared at the flyer, heart thudding. "I'll be there," Mr. Thomas said. "Front row." "Do I have to play something famous?" "Play something honest. That's all an audience wants." Malik nodded, folding the flyer and tucking it into his backpack. That night, he sat at his broken piano and stared at the keys. He didn't reach for Beethoven or Bach. He reached inside himself. And he began to write. Not just a melody, a message, a moment, a memory. He didn't know what he'd call it, but he knew what it felt like. The sound of a boy in a broken building, making something whole. Saturday came like a slow-building storm. Quiet at first, then heavy, unstoppable. Malik barely slept the night before. He lay in bed with the sheet tangled around his legs, staring at the cracked ceiling, heart racing. In his mind, he played the same few bars over and over. His melody, the one that he had written on the piano in the corner, the one that didn't have a name but carried the sound of the hallway at dusk, his mother's footsteps, the rhythm of hunger and hope. By morning, he had memorized every note, not just with his hands, but with his body. Still, he felt sick. "What if I mess up?" he whispered aloud to the empty room. He tried to eat a piece of toast but couldn't swallow. The crust turned dry in his mouth. He drank some water, then sat at the piano and placed his fingers on the keys. They felt stiff, too slow, foreign. He closed the lid. That afternoon, his mother came home from her morning shift wearing her good jeans and the jacket she only wore to church. Her hair was braided tight. She looked at him like she already knew what he needed. "You ready?" she asked. "No," he said. "Good," she replied. "If you were ready, it wouldn't matter enough." They walked to the community center together. The city air was cold and sharp, and Malik could see his breath puffing in small clouds. The building loomed ahead like a place from a different world. Painted walls, smiling faces, warm light spilling through wide glass windows. Inside, the auditorium buzzed with sound. Children in costumes darted between folding chairs. A group of girls practiced a dance routine in one corner. A teenage boy stood nervously beside a microphone, reciting poetry under his breath. Malik scanned the room, eyes darting, until they landed on Mr. Thomas, seated near the front in a sharp navy suit and a maroon scarf looped twice around his neck. "You made it?" the old man said, standing. "Barely," Malik whispered. Mr. Thomas placed a hand on his shoulder. "Listen, you don't need to prove anything. Just go out there and tell the truth." Malik nodded, though he wasn't sure his legs would hold. The host of the event, a woman with bright red glasses and boundless energy, stepped onto the stage and clapped her hands for attention. "All right, everyone. Welcome to the annual Midtown Community Talent Night. We've got singers, dancers, poets, musicians, and even a magician tonight, so give it up for your neighbors, your friends, and your future stars." Applause erupted. Malik barely heard it. The acts passed in a blur. A girl sang a Beyoncé cover. A boy did a comedy routine about school lunch. The crowd laughed, clapped, cheered. Then Malik heard his name. "And now, please welcome to the stage Malik James, age 12. He froze. His mother gave his hand a gentle squeeze. Mr. Thomas whispered, "You've already done the hard part. Now go share it." Malik stood, legs trembling. He walked to the stage like he was wading through water. The piano sat waiting under the spotlight. Sleek, elegant, perfectly tuned, not like the broken one at home. It gleamed under the lights, every surface polished, every key waiting. He sat down, adjusted the bench, took a deep breath. Then silence. He didn't start playing right away. Instead, he looked out at the faces, dozens of them, a sea of strangers, his mother, Mr. Thomas, a few classmates he recognized from school, all watching, all waiting. He pressed one note. It rang out clear. Then another, and another. Slowly Malik began, not rushed, not afraid. He played the melody that he had written, the one born of long nights, cold mornings, and the rhythm of survival. It moved like wind through alleyways, like light slanting through broken blinds, like breath held too long and finally released. The room was silent. Each note told a piece of his story. The key that stuck every third beat, the cracked tile under his chair, the hum of his mother's tired voice saying, "Good night, baby." The climax built like the sound of footsteps running up stairwells, like laughter echoing in stairwells, like the first moment he realized music could be his. Then the ending, soft, drawn out, like the world holding its breath. And then, silence again. For a moment, no one moved. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then the room exploded in applause. Malik sat frozen for a second, unsure if he should bow or run or cry. He stood, nodded awkwardly, and walked off stage, cheeks burning. His mother met him with arms wide open. She didn't say anything, just held him tight. Mr. Thomas appeared beside them, beaming. "That," he said, "was real." Malik wiped his eyes. "I didn't play it perfect," he said. "No," Mr. Thomas said. "You played it honest. That's better." Later that night, when they returned home, the apartment felt different. The piano in the corner still had a cracked leg. The keys still clunked unevenly. But when Malik sat down, he didn't see brokenness. He saw beginnings. He rested his hands on the keys and played again. This time, not for practice, not for performance, just to speak. Because now he knew something he hadn't before. Music wasn't just a thing he loved. It was a thing he was.
Monday, at school, was different. Malik wasn't used to being looked at. Not really. He usually walked the halls like part of the background, never invisible, just unnoticed. That changed after Saturday night. Yo, that was you at the center? You really wrote that song yourself? You play like some movie genius or something. Malik didn't know how to respond. He kept his head down, mumbled thanks, tried not to trip over his own feet. In music class, Ms. Lowell asked him to stay after. "I saw your performance," she said, folding her hands. "You surprised me." Malik shifted awkwardly. "I didn't think you'd be there." "I come every year, but this was the first time I saw a student of mine walk on that stage and make it sing." He stared at the floor. "I want you to consider something. There's a district-wide arts showcase next month. It's juried. Real judges, scholarships, scouts from magnet schools. It's competitive, but I think you've got something special." Malik's stomach twisted. "I don't know." She raised an eyebrow. "I'm not asking if you're sure. I'm asking if you'll try." He hesitated. "Can I think about it?" "Of course," she said, "but don't think too long. Spots fill fast." That night, he told Mr. Thomas. "A district showcase?" The old man said, eyes wide. "That's no joke. Kids from all over the city go to that thing. Some of them got private lessons since they could walk." "I don't belong there," Malik muttered. "Son, you don't belong to places. You belong to your music. If it takes you somewhere, let it." "But I don't have a real piano. I don't even know what key half of my songs are in." "You got ears, you got truth. The rest you'll learn. You want help? I'll help. But don't you dare shrink because somebody else got shinier shoes." Malik didn't answer right away. But that night, he sat at the piano and started rewriting the melody he'd played at the community center. Smoother transitions, a deeper harmony, a new bridge that came to him while waiting for water to boil. He played it 3 times through. Each time, it felt closer. Not perfect, but right. The next day, he told Ms. Lowell, "I'll do it." She smiled like she'd been waiting. "You'll need a second piece, something that shows contrast. Can you manage that?" "I think so. I have an idea." At home, he started working on something new, faster, sharper, like city lights flashing past a moving train. It wasn't finished, but it had fire. Days passed, then weeks. Mr. Thomas helped shape the phrasing, coached him on dynamics, made him practice the transitions again and again until Malik could play them in sleep. "You gotta be ready," he said. "Stage don't wait for nerves." One night, as they practiced late into the evening, Mr. Thomas suddenly stopped playing. He winced. His hand trembled. "You okay?" Malik asked. "Just stiff," the old man said, shaking his fingers. "Comes with age." But Malik noticed. He was slower to move, his hands less steady. "You sure?" "Sure, I'm sure," Mr. Thomas said, forcing a smile. "You just focus on that showcase. Leave the worrying to me." Malik nodded, but a seed of worry had already planted itself. 1 week before the showcase, Ms. Lowell arranged for Malik to rehearse on the school auditorium piano. It wasn't grand, but it was smooth, responsive, and every key worked. As he sat down to play, someone entered the room behind him. "Nice touch," a voice said. He turned. A girl stood by the door, about his age, maybe a year older, tall, with perfect posture and a violin case slung over her shoulder. "I'm Ava, Ridgeway Academy." He recognized the name, a private school with a reputation for producing prodigies. "You're the one from Eden Heights?" He stiffened. "Yeah." "You saw the community show. You played that piece, Untitled, right?" He blinked. "I didn't call it anything." "Well, I did," she said, "because it stuck in my head for days." She crossed her arms. "We're both in the lineup next week. I'm opening, you're closing." "Closing?" he repeated, stunned. She nodded. "They always save the most talked-about act for last." Then she smiled, not mean, but sharp. "Hope you're ready, because I am." She turned and left, her words echoing behind her. Malik stared at the piano. Closing. Most talked about. Pressure crushed down like weight on his chest. That night he could barely sleep. In his dreams, he sat on stage, hands frozen, the keys turning to dust beneath his fingers. The next morning, he went to Building 4 early. Mr. Thomas wasn't expecting him, but Malik needed to talk. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. He tried the doorknob. Locked. From down the hall, a neighbor peeked out. "You looking for Mr. Thomas?" "Yes." "He home?" "No, baby. Ambulance came this morning. Took him to county. Something with his chest. He looked real pale." Malik's blood went cold. He ran all the way home. When his mother came through the door that evening, she found him sitting at the piano, staring. He didn't even look up. "Something happen?" she asked gently. He told her. She placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "He'll be okay." But Malik's chest ached. He didn't know if he could play without Mr. Thomas. He didn't know if he should.
The hospital was too far, the bus too slow, and Malik too small to do anything that mattered. He had begged his mother that evening to take him to County General, please, just for 5 minutes. But visiting hours were over. They had no car. And she looked at him with that same sadness she wore when the electric bill was overdue. Quiet, defeated, loving. "I'll try tomorrow," she whispered, "first thing after work." So Malik waited. The next day at school was a blur. Teachers spoke, pages turned, bells rang, but none of it landed. His mind was fixed on a hospital room he couldn't see, an old man lying in a bed, hands maybe too weak now to touch a single note. He skipped lunch and walked alone behind the gym, where the wind was sharp and smelled faintly of car oil and concrete. He sat on the curb and opened his notebook, the one where he had scribbled ideas, melodic shapes, bits of phrasing, song titles that never stuck. He flipped to the last page and wrote, "If he's gone, what happens to the music?" Then crossed it out. He walked home slowly that afternoon, dragging his feet over cracked sidewalks, scuffing old shoes that were once white. He didn't touch the piano that night, didn't even look at it. He lay in bed, arms folded behind his head, staring at nothing, listening to the silence of the room. Not the good kind of silence. Not the kind between notes. The heavy kind. The kind that closes doors. That night, he dreamed of Lucille, not his broken upright, but hers, Mr. Thomas's piano, whole and gleaming. It stood in the middle of a dark room, bathed in blue light. But every time Malik tried to sit and play, the bench vanished, or the keys crumbled like ash beneath his fingers. He woke with tears in his ears. At dawn, he sat cross-legged on the floor and pulled his notebook toward him. He flipped it open. There, on the inside cover, was the very first thing he'd ever written. Music is not just sound. It's the part of you that won't stay silent. It was something Mr. Thomas had said their first week together. Malik read it again, out loud this time. Then he stood. Walked to the piano. Lifted the cover, and placed his hands, trembling, on the keys. He didn't play one of his old songs. He didn't play the new one either, the showcase piece still half finished. He just played. Not thinking, not correcting, just letting sound pour from the place between grief and love. His mother stood silently at the bedroom door, watching, listening. When the final note fell, she said, "He'd be proud of that." Malik swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can do the showcase." She walked into the room and sat beside him on the edge of the couch. "Then don't do it for the prize, or for the people, or even for me. Do it for him, if you want to. If you're ready." "I don't feel ready," he whispered. She looked at him for a long moment, then said, "Neither did I when I had you, but I showed up anyway." Malik stared at the keys. "I think he wanted me to play," he said. "He did. And I think I need to finish that second piece. Then do it." That night, Malik returned to the new melody, the one that still had no name, no ending. It had started fast, bright, sharp. But now, in the shadow of Mr. Thomas's silence, it shifted. He wrote a new bridge, soft, aching, uncertain. Then something beautiful. A rising line, like breath returning. He finished the piece just after midnight and titled it, "For Mr. T." 2 days before the showcase, Miss Lowell pulled Malik aside in the music room. "Are you ready?" she asked. He nodded. "I think so." She handed him a sealed envelope. He opened it. Inside was a small, handwritten note. "Malik, Lucille misses you. I'll be back home in a few days. Keep playing. By T." Malik smiled so wide his cheeks hurt.
The day of the district showcase arrived wrapped in gray clouds and sharp winds. Malik stood at the window in his school uniform, holding the envelope from Mr. Thomas in one hand and the memory of his melodies in the other. He hadn't touched the piano since finishing for Mr. T. Something about it felt complete, like carving a name into wet cement. He didn't want to smudge it. That morning, Miss Lowell handed him a folder with his registration badge, the performance order, and a program that listed all the participants. There were schools with full orchestras, duets, jazz combos, and kids with last names that sounded like they came from a different world. He found his own name on the final page. Act 27, Solo Piano, Malik James, Eden Heights Public, Untitled, for Mr. T. He swallowed hard. At lunch, Ava found him in the hallway. "You're closing," she said, tapping her program. "No pressure." He tried to smile. "You're ready?" she asked. He nodded. She looked at him, really looked, then said, "I hope it's as good as I remember." Malik wasn't sure if that was encouragement or warning. At 5:45 p.m., he stood backstage at the downtown auditorium, surrounded by velvet curtains, bright lights, and more nervous kids than he'd ever seen in one place. The Steinway on stage gleamed like a spaceship, the kind of piano that made his old upright at home look like a toy. He watched the first acts from the wings. There were ballerinas with perfect spins, a trumpet player who improvised like fire, a girl who sang an original song that made 2 judges wipe their eyes. Malik started to sweat. What was he doing here? He thought of Mr. Thomas's voice. "You don't belong to places. You belong to your music." That was the only anchor he had. When Ava stepped on stage for her performance, the lights dimmed. She sat down with regal calm and lifted her violin like it was part of her body. Her piece began smooth, haunting, precise. She didn't look at the crowd once. Her eyes were closed, brows knit, lost in the sound. It swelled into something complex and furious, then drifted into a final high note that seemed to hang in the rafters. The room broke into applause. Malik clapped too.
She was good. No, great. But instead of feeling crushed, something inside him stilled. His music wasn't hers, and that was okay. Then the stage manager whispered, "You're next." His feet carried him before he knew what was happening. He stepped into the spotlight. The theater was huge, hundreds of faces in the dark. Judges at a table below the stage, pens poised, faces unreadable. The announcer's voice echoed through the mic. "Closing our evening is Malik James from Eden Heights Public School, performing an original work in 2 movements." Silence. He sat, placed his hands on the keys, and remembered. The alleyway where he found the piano, the first broken note that still rang like magic. The long nights, the lessons, the moment his fingers began to speak their own language. Then he began. First Untitled, the piece born of early wonder, shaky hope, and discovery. The melody flowed slowly, then began to breathe deeper. His hands moved like they had always belonged here. The keys weren't foreign anymore. They were home. He transitioned into For Mr. T without pause. It began with soft hesitations, chords that sounded like prayers, then grew, bolder, stronger. The bridge rose like morning over the skyline. He played the ending slower than he ever had before. When the last note fell away, Malik kept his fingers on the keys. The room held its breath. Then, applause, like a wave rising from the darkness, swelling to a roar. He stood, bowed, and walked off stage. Backstage, Miss Lowell hugged him. Ava gave him a nod, not cocky, not dismissive, just respectful. Malik walked outside alone, into the cold night. And there, leaning on a cane beside the front steps, was Mr. Thomas. Wrapped in a thick coat, scarf tucked high, eyes glassy with pride. "You came," Malik whispered. "Told you Lucille missed you," he said. "I thought you couldn't leave the hospital. I checked myself out." "You what?" Mr. Thomas smiled. "A man's gotta know how his student ends a sentence." They stood together under the street lamp, the cold sharp on their breath. Mr. Thomas said nothing more. He just patted Malik's shoulder, then looked up at the stars and said, "You played it just right."
The morning after the showcase, Malik woke up to the sound of his name being shouted from the stairwell. "Malik! Malik James! Phone call!" It was Miss Trudy from downstairs. She didn't even own a cell phone, but she borrowed her nephew's whenever something was important enough to pass along. Malik stumbled out of bed, still in his hoodie from last night, hair pressed sideways from sleep. He opened the door, and Miss Trudy waved her flip phone at him like a wand. "Some lady with a voice like jazz wants to talk to you," she said, pressing it into his palm. Malik brought it to his ear. "Hello? Malik James?" the voice asked. It was deep, smooth, and alert. "This is Cassandra Benton from the Detroit Conservatory for Young Artists." He blinked. "What?" "We were in the audience last night," she continued. "Your performance, especially the second piece, stood out. Raw, honest, and exceptionally voiced for someone with no formal training. Was that really your own composition?" "Yes," he said, his voice catching. She paused. "Well, Malik, we'd like to invite you to audition for our spring semester program. We offer full scholarships for qualified students. It's competitive, but after last night, you're on our radar." Malik sat down on the cold steps, phone pressed tight to his ear. "Audition?" he whispered. I don't have anything prepared." "You have a month," she said, "and if you play like you did last night, that might be all you need." She gave him the details: date, time, location, paperwork. When the call ended, Malik just sat there. Miss Trudy handed him a biscuit wrapped in foil. "Whatever that was," she said, "you better go do it." He nodded, still stunned. That night, he told his mother. She didn't cry, not right away. She just took his face in both hands and said, "I always knew you were going somewhere. I just didn't know how soon." Later, he walked to Building 4 and knocked on Mr. Thomas's door. When the old man opened it, Malik didn't speak. He just held out the printed email and waited. Mr. Thomas read it, then read it again, then sat down slowly on the worn armchair by the window. "You know what this means," he said softly. Malik nodded. "It means I have to prove I belong." "No," Mr. Thomas said, "it means you already do." They spent the next 4 weeks working harder than ever. Mornings before school, evenings after dinner, weekends filled with scales, etudes, theory lessons, mock auditions, posture drills, breathing exercises. "You gotta make that piano believe you belong there," Mr. Thomas said, "not the other way around." Sometimes Malik would falter. He'd miss a run, stumble over a jump, tense up in places where he used to glide. And every time he did, Mr. Thomas would ask the same question: "What are you afraid of?" Malik never had a full answer. But part of it was this: he was afraid of being seen, fully, loudly, permanently. He was afraid that the higher he climbed, the harder he'd fall. But slowly, note by note, breath by breath, he climbed anyway. The day of the audition arrived cold and bright. The conservatory building looked like something from a different world. Columns, archways, music floating faintly from open windows. Students in black coats and scarves stood in clusters, their cases slung over shoulders, their confidence so solid it could have been armor. Malik stepped inside, holding nothing but a folder and a USB drive with his compositions. The waiting room was quiet. Everyone sat alone, some with earbuds in, others with sheet music spread across their laps. Malik sat near the window and tried to slow his breathing. A woman in a burgundy blouse called his name. He followed her down the hall and into a small room with a grand piano, a video camera on a tripod, and 3 judges seated at a long table. They asked him to introduce himself. He did. Then they asked him what he'd be playing. "An original composition," Malik said, his voice shaking. "It's called For Mr. T." One judge looked up. "The same piece you closed with at the district showcase?" "Yes," he said, "but different now." The judge raised an eyebrow. Malik sat and began. This time, the piece moved not just through memory and loss, but through what came after. The ending had changed. It didn't taper into sadness now. It rose. He finished with a chord he'd never played before, soft, open, unresolved, like a question waiting for its answer. When he looked up, the judges weren't writing. They were just watching. Then one of them said quietly, "Thank you, Malik." He stood, bowed, and walked out, knees weak, chest full. Outside, he exhaled hard. A single flake of snow drifted past his face and landed on his wrist. The city had never looked so wide. The acceptance letter came exactly 12 days later. It arrived in a thick white envelope, creased slightly at the corner, with the conservatory's emblem in gold ink. It was addressed to Malik James, typed neatly, like his name finally belonged on something that mattered. He found it on the kitchen table after school. His mom hadn't opened it. She'd just left a sticky note. "Didn't want to steal the moment. Love you, Mom." Malik held the envelope for a long time, his fingers sweating against the seal. He thought about everything. Mr. Thomas's lessons, Ava's smirk, the broken keys in the alley, that first night he touched a piano and the world opened up just a little wider. Then he opened it. "We are pleased to offer you a full scholarship to the spring preparatory program at the Detroit Conservatory for Young Artists." He didn't read the rest right away. His eyes blurred, his knees went weak. He sat on the floor and let the letter rest on his lap like a fragile crown. When his mom came home, she found him still sitting there, letter unfolded beside him. "You got it?" she asked, barely breathing. He nodded. She didn't shout, didn't cry. She just sat down beside him and took his hand. "I'm so proud of you," she said, "and I think someone else is too." That weekend, Malik walked to Building 4 with a copy of the letter in his backpack. Mr. Thomas opened the door already smiling. "So," he said, "they got taste after all." Malik grinned. "You were right. I didn't have to be ready. I just had to show up." Mr. Thomas poured tea. They didn't play that day. They just talked about music and New York and a jazz club in Chicago Mr. Thomas once played in back in '86. He showed Malik old photos, black and white memories of smoky rooms, upright basses, and suits too sharp for their own good. At the door, when Malik was about to leave, Mr. Thomas said, "Remember, what gets you in the room is talent. What keeps you there is truth." Malik nodded. "I'll play honest." "Always," the old man said. A week before orientation, something strange happened. Malik came home from school and found his mother sitting on the couch, holding an envelope. Not a bill, not from school, no return address. She looked distant, as if someone had reached into her chest and stirred old dust. "What's that?" he asked. She hesitated. "It's for you." She handed it over. It was a small brown envelope. His name was handwritten, in all caps, Malik. Inside was a letter, folded in thirds, written in ink that had faded at the edges. "Malik, I don't know if your mother ever told you about me. Maybe she had her reasons. I was young and afraid, and I left when I shouldn't have. You were just a baby, not even 1 year old. I heard your name recently, in a coffee shop. A teacher mentioned a boy from Eden Heights who played like smoke and rain. I used to play too, piano. Never as good as you, maybe, but enough to know what it costs. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know I've been listening, and I'm proud. If you ever want to talk, I left a number. You don't have to call. Just know I exist, and I'm still here. D." Malik read it twice, then sat down, stunned. His mother didn't say anything, just watched his face. "You knew?" he asked. She nodded. "We were kids. He left when you were 10 months old. I never chased him." "Why now?" Malik asked. "I guess music carries farther than we think." Malik held the letter. Not angry, not overjoyed, just uncertain. That night, he sat at the piano, not to practice, not to perform, to process. He played nothing he'd written before, just let the keys find him, something between a cry and a question. His mother stood at the doorway, silent as always. When he finished, she asked, "You gonna call him?" Malik looked down at his hands. "I don't know." And he meant it. The next day, he called Mr. Thomas, told him everything, the letter, the man, the choice. Mr. Thomas was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The truth ain't always clean. Sometimes it shows up late. But if it knocks and you feel it, don't ignore it." Malik sat on the edge of his bed. "Would you call him?" Mr. Thomas chuckled. "Son, I was him." Malik smiled, bitter and soft all at once. He didn't call that night, but he saved the number. And maybe that was enough, for now. The Detroit Conservatory for Young Artists didn't feel like a school. It felt like a temple. The walls breathed with music, Bach in one hallway, a jazz trio warming up in another, a soprano warming her high C in the stairwell. No one wore uniforms. Everyone carried something, a violin case, a stack of scores, a story tucked behind their eyes. Malik stood at the gate with his mother, the acceptance letter folded in her purse, her arms crossed to hide the tremble in her fingers. "You sure you're ready?" she asked, her voice quiet. "No," he said honestly. "Then you're exactly where you're supposed to be." They didn't hug for long. They never did. Just one of those still moments, tight, warm, unspoken. Then he was inside. Orientation was held in the marble atrium under a skylight that turned the room gold. Dozens of students filled the chairs, murmuring in soft, intelligent tones. Some looked 15, others looked 20. All of them looked like they belonged on magazine covers. Malik chose a seat in the back. He kept his hands in his hoodie pocket the whole time. A man with long gray hair and small glasses stood at the front, introducing himself as Director Melvin. He welcomed them to the most intense and beautiful year of your young artistic lives. He used words like discipline, craftsmanship, fragility, brilliance, expectation. Malik stopped hearing him after a while. All he could think about was the weight of it. He didn't know if his hands could carry that kind of weight. The first week was chaos. Classes from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Theory, ensemble, composition, ear training, private lessons. The conservatory gave him a student ID, a locker, and a digital piano in the dorm lounge to practice on. It wasn't Lucille, but it was clean, responsive, real. His teacher was Professor Gislain, a stern woman with a tight bun and French accent so sharp it could slice paper. She gave him 3 etudes on day 1. "You will work until your hands understand what your brain does not," she told him flatly. Malik nodded like he knew what that meant. He didn't. By Thursday, Malik felt like he was drowning. The other students moved like their fingers had choreography. Some had perfect pitch. Others could sight read at impossible speeds. A few already had YouTube channels with tens of thousands of followers. Malik kept his head down. One afternoon, while waiting for a practice room to open, a boy named Elias sat beside him. He was small, freckled, wore a turtleneck like he'd been born in one. "You're the James kid, right?" Elias asked. "The one who closed at District." Malik blanked. "Yeah." Elias nodded. "That was raw. I liked it. No polish, just feeling." Thanks. "Don't lose that," Elias added. "This place eats that if you let it." Then he was gone. One night, alone in the dorm lounge, Malik sat at the piano and tried to write something. Anything. He played a few chords. A melody started, then collapsed. Too complicated, too careful. He sighed, closed the lid. Behind him, someone clapped slowly. He turned. It was Ava. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You play worse when you're scared," she said. "I didn't know you were here. Didn't think I had to announce myself." He looked away. She stepped closer. "You belong here, Malik. Stop acting like someone left the door open for you as a favor." He frowned. "You don't know what it's like to be the kid from nowhere." She tilted her head. "No, I just know what it's like to be the only black girl in every audition room since I was 7. He looked up, surprised. "I thought for this too," she said. They stood there for a long beat. 2 people, different paths, same pressure. "You still play like it matters," she added. "That's rare here. Don't let the noise break that." Then she left. Malik sat back down, lifted the lid, and tried again. That weekend, he got a text from his mom. A man called the house, quiet voice, said he'd wait as long as you need. Malik didn't answer right away. He didn't delete it either. He stared at the screen until the text became something softer. Then, after a moment, he opened his notebook and scribbled something at the top of a blank page. "Rooms can be loud even when no one's speaking." He underlined it twice and started writing a new piece. Not about home, not about grief, about now. The awkward, humming, terrifying now.
Midterms at the conservatory weren't just about grades. They were performances. Every student was required to present a 5-minute solo work, memorized, polished, and performed live before a rotating panel of instructors. For some, it was routine. For others, it was Judgment Day. For Malik, it was something else entirely. Pressure sat heavy on his chest. Not because he couldn't play, but because he was still figuring out what to play. He had 3 weeks to prepare. At first, he considered performing Untitled again, the piece that got him through the door. But every time he practiced it, it felt like trying to wear clothes that didn't fit anymore. The shape was there, but the soul had shifted. So he started writing. He called it Room 312, named after the empty practice room at the end of the 3rd floor, where the walls were scratched with initials and the bench leaned slightly to the left. He wrote it in pieces, late at night, between classes, on napkins, in margins of theory handouts. He wrote with exhaustion in his bones and memory in his hands. The melody began tight, almost claustrophobic, like breath stuck in your ribs. Then it twisted, stretched, climbed, reaching for something it couldn't quite name. But it didn't resolve. Every time he reached the final movement, the ending collapsed.
Too predictable, too pretty, too safe. "I can't finish it," Malik muttered during a late-night session in the lounge. "You will," Elias said from the couch, reading some bizarre avant-garde score upside down. Malik blanked. "What?" Elias looked up. "You're writing like someone's grading your honesty. Stop doing that. Just tell the story." Malik stared at the keyboard, then whispered, "What if I don't know how it ends?" Elias shrugged. "Then say that, but say it in music." The next day, Professor Ghislain stopped him after technique class. "You look like someone being chased," she said dryly. "I haven't finished my midterm piece yet." She raised an eyebrow. "You still have 10 days. "I'm stuck." "Stuck," she repeated, "like the middle of a phrase with no direction?" He nodded. She stepped closer, her voice quieter. "When you do not know what comes next, return to what came before. There is always something you missed." Malik thought about that all night, and finally, 3 days before the performance, he figured it out. He didn't need a grand ending. He needed honesty. He rewrote the final page, left it open, unfinished by design. The final chord was not a conclusion, but a breath held in midair. When he played it back, he knew. It was ready. The morning of the exam, Malik woke up before sunrise. He ate 2 bites of toast, reviewed his handwritten score one last time, then left early and walked the long way to the conservatory, past shuttered bookstores, frozen puddles, and the rusted rail line that split the city. He carried no bag, just his hands and the sound in his head. In the green room, Ava was already stretching her fingers. She looked up and nodded. "You look calm." "I'm not," Malik said. She smiled. "Good. It means it matters." They didn't speak again. When his turn came, Malik stepped into the small recital hall. It wasn't large, just 40 chairs, a well-tuned grand, and 3 professors seated with clipboards. He sat, took a breath, and played Room 312. The melody unfolded slowly, shaped like memory. There was nothing flashy, no flourishes, just tension, truth, and the quiet ache of becoming. At the final bar, he lifted his hands, but didn't strike the last chord. Instead, he let it hang. That silence, that space, that not yet. Then he stood, bowed once, and walked away. In the hallway, Elias was waiting. "Well?" he asked. Malik shrugged. "I don't know." "Exactly," Elias said, grinning. "That's how you know it's good." That night, Malik got a voicemail. It wasn't from the conservatory. It wasn't from Mr. Thomas. It was from the number, his father's. The voice was low, slow, and unsure. "Hey, Malik, you don't have to say anything back. I heard you played something new. I don't know how, but I did. I hope it's not too late to hear more. I'm still listening." Malik didn't call back. He just sat by the window of his dorm and opened his notebook. He drew a bracket after the final bar of Room 312, then wrote 3 words beneath it. Yet. It started with a choice. Malik stared at the number on his phone for 3 days, not because he was afraid exactly, but because he couldn't figure out which version of himself would show up if the call went through. The boy who'd been left? The pianist with a scholarship? The son? Eventually, he pressed the button. It rang twice. Then, "Hello?" The voice was the same as the message, low, worn, like it had been living in basements and half-finished apologies. "It's me," Malik said. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, "I didn't think you'd call." "I didn't think I would either." Another silence. Then the voice asked, "Would you ever want to meet? I'm not far, still in the city. I could come to you." Malik said yes, before he could think of a reason not to. They met on a Sunday afternoon. Neutral ground, a quiet cafe near the Riverwalk, with foggy windows and slow jazz playing overhead. Malik arrived 10 minutes early. He ordered water and stared at his hands. Then, The door creaked open, and the man walked in. He wasn't what Malik expected. No suit, no heavy cologne, just an old bomber jacket, jeans, calloused hands. He looked like someone who'd spent years trying not to be noticed. But the eyes, those were Malik's. They sat down across from each other. No hug, just space and breath. "I'm David," the man said, though they both already knew. "I didn't bring anything. No photos, no speeches." "Good," Malik said. Then they sat in silence, the kind that stretched, not awkward, not heavy, just honest. "You play like your mother," David finally said. Quiet but strong, like she's saying everything without ever raising her voice. Malik blinked. "You knew her music?" David nodded. "She used to hum when she cooked, always in minor keys, even the happy stuff." They both chuckled, surprised by the sound. Then David grew serious. "I should have been there," he said. "I was scared. I thought if I left early, it hurt less. I was wrong." Malik didn't answer right away. He sipped his water. Then said, "You ever stop playing?" David hesitated. "Yeah, for a long time. After I left, piano didn't sound the same when I wasn't home." "Did you miss it?" "Every day." Malik looked out the window. "Sometimes I wonder if the reason I started playing was to make up for all the silence." David looked down. "Maybe the silence was waiting for you to break it." Malik tapped his fingers on the table. 4 notes, a phrase, then again, a little slower. David recognized it. "That's yours?" he asked. Malik nodded. "Part of something I'm working on. Not done yet." "You mind if I—" David held out his hands and tapped the table back. Same rhythm, slightly shifted, syncopated. Malik smiled. They passed it back and forth like a ball. No lyrics, no logic, just music. After a while, David sat back. "You're better than I ever was." "You don't know that," Malik said softly. David's voice cracked. "I do." They sat a while longer. Eventually, Malik stood up. "I should go." David nodded. "I'd like to come hear you play sometime." Malik didn't say yes, didn't say no. He just said, "If it's real, it'll happen." David smiled. Not the full kind, but enough. As Malik walked away, he heard the man say behind him, "Play it true, son." Malik didn't turn around, but he felt the words settle in his chest like a second heartbeat. That night, back at the conservatory, Malik walked into room 312. He placed his fingers on the keys and played something new. Not the piece he was working on, not untitled, not for Mr. T. This was something he didn't fully understand yet. A hybrid, a bridge between bloodlines, a phrase that wanted to stretch into legacy. He called it Absence in 4/4, and let it write itself. The concert hall was packed. Over 500 people filled the velvet-lined seats, murmuring in excitement beneath golden chandeliers. It was the annual Emerging Artists Winter Recital, the conservatory's largest public event, featuring the most promising students of the season. Malik had been selected to close the evening. He didn't expect it. He didn't ask for it. But Professor Ghislaine had simply handed him the slot without comment. "You are not loud," she told him, "but you leave echoes." Malik had spent the last 2 weeks rewriting. He'd combined fragments from room 312, themes from Absence in 4/4, even a slowed-down motif from Untitled. The result was something unclassifiable, too structured to be jazz, too personal to be classical, too fluid to be anything but him. He called it Inheritance, and it would be the first time he performed it anywhere but inside his own chest. Backstage, he sat alone. No sheet music, just his hands. His mother had taken the train early to be there. He hadn't seen her yet, but he knew she was in the audience, probably in the second row, wearing the blue coat she saved for special days. He didn't know if Mr. Thomas had made it. The weather had turned icy, and the man's knees didn't care much for stairs anymore. He definitely didn't know if David had come.
And strangely, it didn't matter. Not like it used to. This performance wasn't for any one person. It was for all of them. And none of them. A soft knock. "Malik," one of the event coordinators whispered, "you're on deck." He nodded. His fingers twitched. Not from nerves, from need. The lights dimmed. The MC's voice rang out. "And now, closing tonight's recital, Malik James, piano, performing an original composition titled Inheritance." Applause rose like a tide. Malik walked onto the stage. He couldn't see the crowd beyond the footlights, but he could feel them. He bowed once, then sat. The grand piano waited, breathing. He lifted the lid, rolled his shoulders, closed his eyes, and began. The opening notes were quiet, too quiet, deliberately so, like a question whispered between strangers. Then came the response, curved, gentle, vulnerable, chords that trembled but didn't break. Each section told a piece of his life. The alley with the broken keys, the lessons in building 4, the silence between him and his mother that became love, the anger, the abandonment, the note left unsaid, the voice on the phone. Then came the swell, the moment the melody reached towards something larger, family, legacy, future. Malik's hands danced now, not with certainty, but with belonging. He was no longer playing a piece. He was the piece. When the final phrase came, it didn't crash. It faded. A single ascending run, unresolved. Then stillness. Total. Sacred. He kept his hands on the keys for 3 full seconds, then let go. The applause didn't come right away. It bloomed, like people needed a second to return to their own bodies. Then it erupted. Malik stood, bowed once, and walked off stage. Back in the wings, Ava hugged him, tight, no sarcasm. Elias wiped his eyes with his sleeve and said, "Okay, now I hate you a little bit." Miss Lowell from his old school had driven across the city just to be there. Even Professor Ghislaine gave him a rare nod, the kind that meant more than words ever could. He found his mother outside the hall. She was holding her coat shut with one hand and her heart with the other. "You finished it," she said. "No," Malik said quietly. "I just let it keep going." Then, from behind her shoulder, a familiar cane tapped the ground. Mr. Thomas stood there, smiling, scarf blowing in the cold. "You hear all that?" Malik asked. "I felt it," the old man replied. "Every note." Malik smiled wide, then turned. David was there too, at a distance, not intruding, just watching. Malik gave him a small nod. David nodded back. That was enough. For now. Later that night, Malik sat in his dorm alone. He opened his notebook. On the last page, he wrote, "Music isn't what saves you. It's what stays after you've already been saved. -MJ. He closed the book, stared at the piano across the room, then walked over and began to play. Not for anyone, just to see what came next.